morning of August 7th, 1964, the United States Congress voted to authorize a war in response to an attack that never happened. The House of Representatives debated for 40 minutes and passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution 416 to nothing. The Senate passed it 88 to 2. Fewer than 300 words long, it gave President Lyndon Johnson the authority to use military force in Southeast Asia without a declaration of war. And it became the legal foundation for a conflict that killed 58,220 Americans and, by most estimates, well over 1 million Vietnamese. Only 2 men in either chamber voted no: Wayne Morse of Oregon and Ernest Gruening of Alaska. Both argued that the evidence didn't hold up, and both warned that Congress was handing its war powers to the White House. Neither would survive the next election. It took 4 decades and the release of the government's own classified records to prove how right they had been. To understand what Congress thought it was voting on, you have to start with what almost nobody in Congress knew. By the summer of 1964, the United States had more than 16,000 military advisors in South Vietnam, and the government they were propping up in Saigon was losing. Lyndon Johnson had inherited the war along with the presidency the previous November, and he was running for election that fall against Barry Goldwater, determined to look firm on communism without owning an American war. He wanted the presidency on his own terms that November, and Vietnam was a problem to be managed until the votes were in. His campaign line was that he sought no wider war. What he didn't mention was a covert program called Operation Plan 34A. Conceived by the Americans and carried out by South Vietnamese crews in American-supplied fast patrol boats, it ran commando raids against the North Vietnamese coast. Sabotage teams, kidnapping parties, shore bombardment. On the night of July 30th, 1964, 34A boats shelled North Vietnamese radar installations on 2 islands in the Gulf of Tonkin, Han My and Han Yu. The next day, the destroyer USS Maddox steamed into the same Gulf on what the Navy called a DeSoto patrol, an electronic eavesdropping mission, cruising international waters with a signals intelligence van bolted to the deck, mapping North Vietnamese radar and radio traffic. From Hanoi's side of the water, the picture looked simple. Commandos shelling their islands one night, an American destroyer loitering offshore with its antennas up the next. Whether or not the 2 missions were formally coordinated, North Vietnam treated them as one operation. For the next week, Washington would insist that the Maddox was on a routine patrol and that the United States had no part in any raids. Neither claim was true. On the afternoon of August 2nd, 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats of the 135th Torpedo Squadron came out from the coast and ran straight at the Maddox. This attack was real. The Maddox fired warning shots as the boats closed, then opened up with her 3- and 5-inch guns, more than 280 rounds. The boats launched their torpedoes, and every one of them missed. 4 F-8 Crusader jets from the carrier Ticonderoga arrived and strafed the boats, leaving 1 dead in the water. 4 North Vietnamese sailors were killed, and 6 were wounded. The Maddox took exactly 1 hit, a single 14.5mm machine gun round through the superstructure. Not 1 American was hurt. Hanoi never denied this attack. Its own naval histories record the action. Johnson chose not to retaliate. Instead, he sent Hanoi a stiff diplomatic warning, announced that the patrols would continue, and ordered a second destroyer, the Sea Turner Joy, into the Gulf alongside the Maddox. The point being that the United States Navy did not get chased out of international waters. But the version given to the public was carefully trimmed. The attack was described as unprovoked, and McNamara told reporters the Maddox had been on a routine patrol in international waters, nothing more. Nobody mentioned the warning shots, the eavesdropping mission, or the island raids 2 nights earlier that had put North Vietnamese coastal defenses on a war footing. So 2 American destroyers went back up the Gulf, into waters where the other side believed itself under attack, with crews who had every reason to expect a fight. 2 nights later, that expectation supplied an entire battle. The night of August 4th was moonless and rough, with thunderstorms rolling across the Gulf. Late that evening, the Maddox and the Turner Joy began tracking radar contacts that appeared out of nowhere, closed at impossible speeds, and vanished. For the next 2 hours, the 2 destroyers wheeled through the dark at flank speed, firing more than 300 shells at the contacts. Sonar operators reported torpedoes in the water, 22 of them over the course of the night. Every torpedo missed. Every contact dissolved. Neither ship was hit. No lookout on the Maddox ever saw an enemy boat. The fleeting shapes reported from the Turner Joy never held up. And when morning came, there was no wreckage, no oil slick, and no debris anywhere on the water. Later analysis found that the radar had been painting weather and wave tops, and that the Maddox's sonar was picking up the beat of her own propellers, reflected off the rudder as the ship zigzagged. The battle had been a duel with the ocean. James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who had led the air cover 2 days earlier, was overhead for 90 minutes that night with the best view anyone had. "Our destroyers were just shooting at phantom targets," he wrote later. There were no PT boats there. There was nothing there but black water and American firepower. Captain John Herrick, commanding the patrol from the Maddox's bridge, reached the same conclusion within hours, and before dawn he cabled Honolulu. Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonarmen may have accounted for many reports. No actual visual sightings by Maddox. Suggest complete evaluation before any further action taken. The complete evaluation never happened. Herrick's warning reached Washington early that afternoon, Washington time, hours before the president went on television. At the White House, the decision to retaliate was effectively made by lunchtime. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara spent the afternoon on the phone with Admiral Sharp in Honolulu, who told him plainly that there was doubt about whether an attack had occurred at all. The strikes were not delayed. Johnson himself seems to have understood almost immediately what had really happened out there. He was soon telling an aide, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." Just before midnight, he appeared on live television to announce that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas had required him to order air action against North Vietnam, adding in the same breath that we still seek no wider war. Out at the carriers, James Stockdale was shaken awake before dawn and told he would be leading the retaliatory strikes. He knew exactly what had and hadn't happened on the water the night before, and he asked the question that history has kept. Retaliation for what? That day, 64 sorties flew off the Ticonderoga and the Constellation against 4 torpedo boat bases and the oil storage depot at Vin, which was left burning. 2 American aircraft were shot down. Lieutenant Junior Grade Richard Sather, flying a Sky Raider, was killed, the Navy's first aviator to die in Vietnam. and a 26-year-old lieutenant junior grade named Everett Alvarez ejected from his burning Skyhawk over Han Gai Harbor and was pulled from the water by North Vietnamese militia, the first American aviator captured in the North. He would spend the next 8.5 years in North Vietnamese prisons, most famously Hoa Lo, the place American POWs named the Hanoi Hilton, beginning with more than a year in solitary confinement. The war's first prisoner was taken in retaliation for an attack that had not occurred. The resolution itself was already written. A draft had been sitting ready for months. William Bundy at the State Department had prepared it back in the spring, waiting for an occasion. And on August 5th, Johnson sent it to Congress. The operative language authorized the president to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the forces of the United States and to prevent further aggression. Johnson privately compared it to Grandma's nightshirt. It covered everything. On August 6th, McNamara went before the Senate to present the evidence. Wayne Morse had been tipped off by a phone call from an officer inside the Pentagon, and he asked the question directly. Was the Maddox connected to the South Vietnamese raids on the North? McNamara answered under oath. Our Navy played absolutely no part in, was not associated with, was not aware of any South Vietnamese actions, if there were any. In fact, the Navy had helped plan the raids and supplied the boats, and the Maddox had been listening to the radar traffic they stirred up. The House debated for 40 minutes the next day and passed the resolution 416 to nothing. The Senate took parts of 2 days. J. William Fulbright, the Foreign Relations Chairman, managed the bill and vouched for the administration's account. 4 years later, his own committee's hearings would pull the first threads of that account apart. Morse stood nearly alone on the floor. I believe that within the next century, future generations will look with dismay and great disappointment upon a Congress which is now about to make such a historic mistake. Gruening, who months earlier had told the Senate that all of Vietnam was not worth the life of a single American boy, refused to vote for sending our American boys into combat in a war in which we have no business, which is not our war, into which we have been misguidedly drawn, which is steadily being escalated. The vote was 88-2. Johnson signed the resolution on August 10th, and in a single Harris poll, his approval on Vietnam went from 42% to 72%. For a few months, the resolution just sat there, a signed blank check. Then in early 1965, the sustained bombing of North Vietnam began, the campaign called Rolling Thunder, and in March, the first American combat troops waded ashore at Da Nang. By 1968, there were more than 500,000 Americans in Vietnam. Congress never declared war. Every escalation rested, legally, on the few hundred words passed that August morning. The war killed 58,220 Americans, and nearly all of them died after that vote. Before August 1964, American deaths in Vietnam numbered in the hundreds. Estimates of Vietnamese deaths, military and civilian, North and South, run from about 1 million to more than 3 million people. The two men who voted no both lost their seats in 1968. Gruening, 81 years old, lost his primary in Alaska. Morse lost Oregon by roughly 3,500 votes. Everett Alvarez was still a prisoner in the North. His captivity outlasted Johnson's presidency, the Tet Offensive, and the resolution itself. Congress repealed it in January 1971, and the war simply continued for 2 more years on the president's claimed authority as commander-in-chief, which said plainly enough how little the paper had ever constrained anyone. Alvarez came home on February 12, 1973, after 3,113 days, the second longest captivity of any prisoner of war in American history. He was 26 when he was shot down. He was 35 when he saw California again. 60 years after the shootdown, Congress voted to award Alvarez the Congressional Gold Medal, the same institution that had needed only 40 minutes of House debate and 1 false report to set the course that put him in that cell. The truth came out in installments. In 1971, the Pentagon Papers revealed that the resolution had been drafted months before the incident it answered, and that the coastal raids had been an American operation from the start. In 1995, McNamara flew to Hanoi and asked General Vo Nguyen Giap what actually happened in the Gulf on the night of August 4th, 1964. Giap's answer? Absolutely nothing. McNamara said it himself in 2003, on camera. And in 2005, the National Security Agency declassified its own internal history, which concluded that the evidence of the Phantom attack hadn't simply been misread. It had been skewed to fit the answer Washington wanted, while intercepts pointing the other way stayed buried. The agency had sat on its historians' findings for years, in part because officials feared they cut too close to the intelligence then being cited for the war in Iraq. By then, nearly everyone in the story was gone. Gruening died in June 1974. Morse followed him a month later. Neither lived to see the war end. In 1973, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution over a presidential veto, written specifically so that no president could ride a resolution like Tonkin into a decade of war. Morse had told the Senate that future generations, within the next century, would look back on that vote with dismay. On the arithmetic, he was wrong. It didn't take a century. It took 7 years.